My name is Will Kayatin, and we are broadcasting live from Hazard, Kentucky, the Holler Broadcasting Studio. We call it HBS. It is state-of-the-art, so it's the best of the best. I've got support here from our digital engineers, two of whom will be presenting after I get through my presentation of the content after Ms. Jenkins. But let's just take a couple minutes and allow folks to introduce themselves and do share your years of experience, because we have differing levels of experience with us, which is kind of cool. And I think that will make this experience this morning much richer.
I've been teaching FMD, getting ready to start my 33rd year at Pike Central High School in Pike County. I have worked with the grade school for 1 year, and then the rest of the time has been intermediate, high school, and now just all high school. It's going to be an exciting year for me. I'm going to have 18 kids in my class, and I'm going to have a team teacher with me who's always been at the grade school. So it's going to be interesting.
Indeed, indeed. And it's been a joy to work with you over the years, Miss Bartley. Thank you for being with us. Miss Napier?
Yes, hi, Miss Selena Napier here. I teach FMD at Floyd Central High School. I've been there 3 years, so I am kind of new. I service probably 10 kids in the past, but this year they're going to say we're going to have around 12 each. So we are going to increase a little bit this year.
When I was at Floyd Central a week ago, because Mr. Roger Wallen had the second installment of summer school, he shared that with me, that your caseload would increase. So, and I'm sorry, Miss Napier, that I missed you since you were leading the first summer school session.
Yes.
So forgive me, we'll make it up to you, to be sure.
Okay, thank you.
And it's been a privilege to be able to work with you and Mr. Wallen at Floyd Central. Thanks for all your support and leadership this past year. We had a lot of fun. And when I was there about a week ago, your students really enjoyed it. So thanks so much. All right, so I'm gonna hush because I told Miss Jenkins, who is broadcasting to us from Frankfort, Kentucky, our state capital. She is one of our state OVR leaders. I've had the good fortune of being able to work with her over the past 2 years, and she is someone I report to for my OVR piece of work. And just to qualify, moving into this year, my role has changed a little bit. I will be spending about 100 days this year doing OVR direct service work with students, which is what you've experienced over the past 4 years with me. However, I will be working 120 days under the umbrella of special education to continue to enhance the capacity of our teachers with transition. So I believe it will be a fun year for me, learning some new things, and this is kind of my first splash, in part because a couple weeks ago, Miss Bates and Miss Combs, our co-directors here in special education, asked me to step in and facilitate this training for our teachers about CCR, College and Career Readiness for Alternate Assessment. So Cheryl has helped me a bunch. I have just exhausted her with questions, but she's been awesome. We've worked together for almost 20 years. And so she went to Southeast South Central, so she will join us toward the end to address any questions that we may not be able to answer. So we look forward to her joining us later. Okay, so Miss Jenkins, will you please introduce yourself? We have enabled you to share your screen, but if for some reason that doesn't work, I have Tanner, one of our digital engineers, who's prepared to move our audience through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And it's not allowing me to share my screen.
Okay.
So, but I'm Dorothy Jenkins. As Will indicated, I work with the Kentucky Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. I am located at the agency central office here in Frankfort. And I've been with the agency for 13 years. Again, I currently serve as the administrator for the Pre-Employment Transition Services Program. And I've been in this position for 3 years, but I've worked as a VR counselor for 10 years prior to starting in this position as administrator. Have my master's degree in rehabilitation counseling from the Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, and working with Voc Rehab is such a rewarding experience, and I definitely love serving and helping individuals that have disabilities with limitations to becoming successful in the employment world.
Okay, Ms. Jenkins, we re-enabled the share screen feature, so you should give it a try. I think it'll work. If not, we'll get Tanner. Oh, there we go. Looks beautiful.
Okay, now let's give me 1 second.
Take your time. We've got plenty of time.
Okay. So yes, well originally my immediate supervisor, Veronica Dale, was going to give this presentation, but I wanted to, she had a family emergency, so could not be here today. So I am glad that I'm here and can share this information with you. When I go over this brief PowerPoint, it is going to be an overview, but it's going to sound like I'm actually talking to a student. But what I'm hoping that you can actually use this document, you know, to share with your students and parents when they are wanting and needing to be referred to our agency for services. I don't know if all of you are familiar with vocational rehabilitation. But what vocational rehabilitation is, we are an agency, we are a state agency that work with individuals that have disabilities. Our goal is to help that individual to find a job. Now, when I say finding a job, meaning whatever steps that it's going to take to help that individual to meet the actual career goal that they're wanting to meet. So it could be anywhere from a clerical worker, a restaurant worker, or a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, or, you know, so it varies upon what that individual is wanting to do. So our goal is to help them to find that ideal job that they're wanting, once, you know, that's going to make them successful in life, not just working a part-time job. So it's actual job. And it should be in a competitive and integrated employment. And what that means is that that person is working in the same type of job that anyone else is working on. So people can have disabilities, but a person to have a disability is going to be in some type of employment setting that everyone else is doing as well. We work with individuals starting at the age of 14. Now, you are familiar with the program that WIA does with the pre-employment transition services, which starts at age 14, but this is what I'm talking today is overall, you know, what we do with Voc Rehab. We are a state agency, so the person has to be eligible for services. We do have a eligibility process that we have to let that individual go through in order to first determine if they are eligible for the services. Voc Rehab, we have counselors in all 120 counties in Kentucky. And our goal, again, is to make that person and help that person to be successful in life. What we can help that student do is learn about the various careers. We help them to gain work experience, help them to plan for their career, and find that job that matches their strengths, limitations, and interests. We can help them to have reasonable accommodations when it's needed for them to do the job that they're wanting to do, and so much more. I can't tell you in just what the time that I have here today to tell you everything that we can do for a student that have a disability, and it's going to be based upon that individual student's need. So the services is going to vary. The first process that we would need when we are working with your student is to have a referral. And that referral can come from the school, can come from the parent, guardian, and can come from the individual student themselves if they're 18 or older, as well as from any other professional. The referral from the school with that, you can discuss, we can, each voc rehab district, they have counselors. So a counselor may already be working with with the teachers or the counselors there at a particular school or at your school, but your school will discuss the vocational rehabilitation services you, with that student and parent. You can invite a voc rehab counselor to your transition meetings. Not saying that the counselor will be able to attend every meeting, but we want the counselors to make a good effort to actually attend your meeting. Or if they can, now most people or schools are still having things virtual. So I don't know if your school will be having virtual ARC meetings or what, but that's something that we hoping that you can work out with the counselor. And even if the counselor can't attend an actual ARC meeting, then they should have some type of information that they can give you, that you can give to your student or parent to help them to get in contact with voc rehab individually as needed. Now, a referral can come from anyone, in your school. So what you would do is you would contact the voc rehab office that's closest to the county that you live in, speak to someone on the behalf of that student, and let that person know that you are referring your student to voc rehab. And then voc rehab, you would give them the basic information, that student's name, date of birth. If you could give them the social security number, that is helpful, because we are going to need that when it comes to the actual application process. You also need to give the voc rehab counselor any type of contact, that student's phone number or the parent's phone number, how they can reach that student in order to set up an appointment. So now that you referred your student to voc rehab, what will voc rehab counselors do? They will provide information, resources, guidance, and counseling from the application process to closure. They will give that student informed choices that's related to their strengths, their concerns, capabilities, and to help them to prepare for work. We want to help that student to figure out what type of work they want to do. The counselor is going to coordinate services with that student on what we call an IPE when they're making that referral, which you all have EPs in schools, but with voc rehab, you may heard the term a lot, IPE, which means individual plan for employment, which that individual plan for employment is that goal map of success that's going to list all the services that the counselor can help that student meet, and they're going to do this together. So the counselor and the actual voc rehab counselor and the student is going to work together and developing a plan, once they've gone through the application and the eligibility process and all. And between the counselor and the student, they would come up with that plan to determine how long is it going to take for that individual to get those services that they need to help them to meet that ideal goal. So the student themselves is going to have some type of responsibilities. So that student is going to have to make all scheduled appointments and stay in contact with the counselor. So just, applying one time and just, forgetting about it, that's not going to work between the counselor and the student, because they have to be connected in order to get that final success of closure at the end. So that student is going to need to stay involved throughout the entire process of voc rehab. So if a student comes in and meet with the counselor and they've decided on a career goal, and it's going to take 4 years because they first have to go to college and and get a degree, then that student is going to have that responsibility of, making all those appointments and, yearly reviews and to stay in contact with that counselor so that the counselor can continue to know what's going on with that student as they progress through Voc Rehab. And that student is going to need to keep the VR counselor informed of any changes, whether they are moved to another state or whatever, they are gonna, I can't stress this enough, it's because the key is just keeping in contact, with the counselor with any changes or concerns that's going on with them in life. What are transition services? Transition services include a set of coordinated activities that helps a student to be successful after they exit from high school. And that can be college or vocational training, that competitive integrated employment, or independent living. I know every student or every parent's idea of what success for that student is not the same. Although our goal with Voc Rehab, that student has to have that, mindset or the plan that they are going to eventually work. But sometimes it may not reach to just working. A parent may want to have that student to have that independent living, be able to live on their own, and to get whatever services and resources they need to help them to live independently in life. What are other examples that will include on that IPE services when that individual plan for employment? It can be vocational guidance and counseling, personal assistant services. The person may be visually impaired, so they may need some type of vision aids. That person may be deaf and hard of hearing, and they may need some interpreting services. The person may need some type of rehabilitation technology. So just like in high school, your student have that IEP, and they have certain, accommodations or modifications on their IPE that IEP, that they need in order to be successful in the classroom. So that Voc Rehab counselor can set that student up for those whatever services that they need if they're going to be in college and they may need some type of rehab tech, smart pen, or just trying to think of just certain things, JAWS, or different things that they may be getting in high school, but now they may need those things if they're going to be going on to college. Driver's rehabilitation training. We do have a program that can help a person to drive. A person may be paraplegic and they may need van modifications. So those things could vary when we talk about driver's rehabilitation training. Supported employment is a more one-on-one, like job coaching. A person may need some strict one-on-one support in order to help them to find employment. So that's when they may need some type of supported employment, and what we and they're matched with a job coach with that supported employment program. Regular job placement and on the job training. We can assist with tuition and books. Tuition, I would say, it is based upon income and it is a criteria, but however, those are some things that Voc Rehab can help a student with. And as well as, the main goal at the end is going to be that employment and helping them with that employment follow-up. And once they even get a job, there's some type of post-employment services that can be provided as well. Okay, so this was just a short overview, but the main thing is just keeping in mind that, just sharing with your students, about our agency. And we have each county, have their own contact. I hope, that you may have already, have some type of, relationship, with your VR counselors that's in the districts that you work. But if not, we're going to help you to get in contact with those. But however, this contact here, Veronica Dale, she's the Transition Services Branch Manager. If you cannot find a contact for your local district VR, then you can contact our central office number here, and as well as my immediate Supervisor Veronica Dale, who is the manager, and that can connect you with the resources and the person that you need for Voc Rehab.
Fabulous. I have some questions. I don't mean to preempt the teachers, but there's plenty of time just to make the connections. Critical for Miss Dorothy Jenkins to lead this presentation because there's a direct connection between what we're going to discuss with the career work experience certification and the employability skills attainment record that you are leading in your schools with your students, because it lays a solid foundation of groundwork to help them transition into enjoying support from vocational rehabilitation. So to me, I thought having Miss Jenkins do this presentation sets a really nice stage, because it's not uncommon for teachers to have conversations with me about what's next for my students. So this could very well be what's next for your students as you move them through grade 12, grade 14, and beyond, even if they stay at your high school till they're 21. It was kind of cute when I had a conversation with Mr. Roger Wallen about a student that I was processing to send in my report to the Eastern Region Vocational Rehabilitation Office. I wanted to be sure that the student hadn't graduated, and Roger very politely reminded me that, Will, I'm sure you know this, but our low incidence students can stay till they're 21. So it was kind of cute. Yes, I knew that, thank goodness. But I just wanted to make sure, because sometimes our low incidence students exit at grade 12. They don't necessarily stay, or they may stay for 1 or 2 more years. But I thought it was critical to have Miss Jenkins do this presentation for Miss Napier, Floyd County. That's the Prestonsburg office, and you probably know that. And those folks are wonderful. I've had good luck working with them over the past 4 years, and I'm happy to make any connections that you need, but you probably already have those contacts in place. If you ever have any problems, just let me know, but they're really good. Equally, the Pike County branch for Miss Bartley for Pike Central High School. I know she's got a good relationship with those folks just down about 5 miles down the road. And both of those VR offices fall under the West Liberty branch office. And that's Mr. Anthony Perry. And he is a very experienced, long-standing vocational rehabilitation administrator. So we got good folks in our region, and we've got tons of support from Miss Jenkins and Miss Dale. So I'm very appreciative, but I had a couple quick questions. I just wanted to make those comments to make the connections between VR and the rest of our conversation today about CWEC and the ESAR. And I'll even though you know what those acronyms stand for, I'll be sure to articulate them completely. But what you're familiar with in working with me is when we do the referral forms to OVR to establish case numbers, those are called potentially eligible for pre-employment transition services. The terminology changes when they actually get referred to vocational rehabilitation. What is the term that's used, Ms. Jenkins? Instead of potentially eligible, they now become...
Well, first step, instead of potentially eligible, then they become, I guess, an applicant with Voc Rehab, and from an applicant to an eligible person with Voc Rehab.
I just wanted to make sure I had the terminology. And I've had conversations with VR counselors, and typically to process a student who is making application to VR, it takes about, I was told, about a month to get everything processed. Does that sound about right?
Yes, it does. And it, of course, is based upon a counselor's schedule as far as how it's going to work with them actually meeting with the student. So after they meet with the student for that very first time into becoming an applicant, then the next step is to move them, through the eligibility process, which we have 60 days to determine if they're eligible for services.
Yeah, and again, to reiterate, there is a direct connection and correlation between a student's ILP which informs the IEP with the IPE per VR, which is the student's individual plan for employment. So I'm so appreciative that Ms. Jenkins had time to do this presentation. And this is one of the documents that I will send out this afternoon as a resource for you. But I think Ms. Bartley has, I have one more quick question so I don't forget it. Are there term limits, Ms. Jenkins, on how long a person can participate and receive benefits from VR?
That is going to be on an individual basis. So it all depends. Like that's going to be dependent upon what that person's goal is. So once they've gotten close to getting all those skills and trainings, and then once they have gotten employed, then the VR counselor will keep that case open for at least 90 days. And then after that, we can close that case as being successful, as long as, between the student and the counselor, that they are all in agreement that they have achieved their vocational goal and job, that is.
Ms. Bartley, you might want to unmute your mic.
What I wanted to ask was, I've got some students that are just about to complete their high school career this year, and he's employable so well that he's working alongside our janitors in school. How can we access job coaching services when we don't have a job coach in our county? What are the avenues to get a job coach?
Okay, so if you said that this student is a senior, where they're getting ready to graduate, exit like next year, now you need to go ahead and refer that student to Voc Rehab, and the counselor will determine, what type of services that can be available, like if they're needing, if you don't have an actual, school program that works with transition in your school, so then they can be matched with supported employment. And supported employment, they are considered as job coaches. They are private providers, and your counselor within your district will have a list of those providers that they can actually refer that student to.
I've called Voc Rehab and asked them, and they don't have anyone.
Okay, so no, where they can't just come out there and do job coaching, but what you're gonna have to do, I think, so like for instance, if you call the counselor, say, hey, do you have a job coach that I can, you can come to your school? That is gonna be a no. The thing is that it's gonna be based upon that individual student, but that student first needs to become an applicant and go through the process with VR, and then individually, then that counselor can match that student with whatever services that they need. So I think sometimes when we, asking those questions to the counselor, they can't give you like a general statement. Yeah, I have a job coach, but it's going to be based upon that individual. So it's best to go ahead and just refer that student to Voc Rehab.
Okay, I've got another question.
Sure.
I'm actually considering retiring in a few months.
Okay.
And I would like to become a job coach. What would be the steps that I would need to take to try to do that within VR? Because I've tried it through the school system, and that's a lot of grant writing that my superiors don't want to mess with it right now.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
What would I need to do to bridge that, to move on, to try to apply to be one locally for our kids in our county?
Okay. With supported employment and what we call CRP, which stands for Community Rehabilitation Program, they are our private providers that have that their program set up, and they can become a first their trainings and all of that, eligibility application process to go through, and then I was in supported employment branch set up various providers to become a private vendor with the agency. So if you just want, I can give you contact for our support employment branch, and they can go over that information with you like that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Good luck to you.
I will, Ms. Bartley, I'll connect you directly with Ms. Jenkins through email. She's awesome.
Thank you, sir. I can always count on you to help me out.
Thank you. That made my day.
Yes, Will is great. He's definitely all a resource.
Thank you. Any questions from Ms. Napier?
No, I'm good for right now. Thanks.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, Ms. Jenkins, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. You're so gracious, and
so
all your
welcome.
great leadership. And we'll continue to work toward changing the life trajectories of the young people in our region. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and look, as the student would say, am I excused?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Or you can stay.
Yeah, well, I do. Look, I would stay, but I do have some other things that I need to get
Sure.
done. But thank you for the invite. We appreciate you, and thank you for the work that you do for students as well.
We'll continue to invite you to these forums.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Yes, ma'am. Bye-bye. All right, Ms. Bartley, Ms. Napier, do we need a 5-10 minute break, or do you want me to keep rolling?
I would appreciate that if you didn't mind.
Yep, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene. Sound good? And I'm going to work us through a little bit of content. It'll probably take 30 minutes, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. You're familiar with this content, but I think it will be very productive, especially since we're recording this for teachers who may not have much experience with CWEC or ESAR, even though it's only a few years old, but I think it'll be very helpful, especially since I've kind of prepared this through the lens of a teacher. It'll take about 30 minutes just to walk through the career readiness pathway portion of Kentucky's alternate assessment. And it's wonderful that our students have the opportunity to experience this pathway. And it's not new, but the career work experience certification portion of the process is somewhat new. In fact, Ms. Cheryl Mathis shared with me a PowerPoint presentation that GREC, the Green River Educational Cooperative, used in this training. I think it was last year, and I've been updating the links. I like it. I'm going to share it. I need to tweak it a little bit more, but I think it'll be a nice reference point for you if you need to go back, because there are a lot of pieces and parts. In my conversation with Cheryl, she said, you know, this is really not complicated, but there are some pieces and parts that you need to kind of pay attention to. So I'm going to kind of work through this. In fact, it was kind of interesting to me that when GREC did their presentation to teachers on this content, they started with the ESAR, which is basically the instrument used to assess the career work experience portion of the career readiness pathway that is alternate assessment. I'm going to reverse that. To me, it makes more sense to talk for 15 minutes about the career work experience certification process, because when we get to those work-based learning experiences and the 40 hours that are required annually, that's kind of the elephant in the room, especially in rural America, rural Kentucky, because opportunities are limited for lots of reasons, especially since we seem to be experiencing a resurgence of the COVID pandemic, albeit through a variant, and that is worrisome to be sure. So let's see what happens. But this is a document that I shared with you. I'm going to send it again because I've got some notes, little things that I've highlighted. But the career work experience certification is one of 4 components. Obviously, you've got the other 2 components with the academic readiness piece and the TAR and the attainment tasks, but we're just going to focus, because of limited time, on the career readiness portion of alternate assessment. It's one of 4 components. The CWEC was developed for students with significant cognitive disabilities. You know all that. I highlighted the attainment of the career work experience certification is a process. It's not an assessment, even though students will be assessed through the ESAR. And the overall CWEC process includes 3 general phases: career exploration, student-focused planning, and instruction in experiential curriculum. Students receive instruction including work-based learning opportunities in the classroom, school, community, and work sites. And as we move through this, we'll talk a little bit about the least restrictive environment, which you're obviously familiar with, because a 9th grader is not going to go directly into the community and have a work-based learning experience. That's not the way it works. As you move down to the content addressed, I highlighted that the CWEC is obviously linked to the employability and foundational academic standards for alternate assessment and corresponding progressions. And I actually have the progressions document, which I found very helpful in preparing to share this information with you this morning. So I'm going to send that to you. You may have it, but it's very handy to kind of keep in your CCR folder on your desktop. These are the same standards, which I think is really cool, assessed by the Employability Skills Attainment Record. And we'll talk about the ESAR next. The standards, and this is, I think, invaluable for our students, our low incidence students, the standards align with a subset of the standards assessed by the Kentucky Career and Technical Education End of Program, CTE-EOP assessment for articulated credit and the CTE pathway standards document. And there are links in these documents if you need them, but it's based on 40 standards, and here are the skills. I didn't highlight them because they're right here, easy to see: personal qualities and people skills. Again, these concepts aren't complicated, but they're comprehensive. And I know that you work your students through these as you develop those 4 courses. And as we move down through here, you'll see the courses and the course codes. You don't have to go to the KDE website to get those. And you probably have them on your desktop anyway. Personal qualities and people skills. I'm not gonna read all this. It's right here on the screen. Can everybody see my screen okay? Ms. Bartley, can you see it? Foundational academic skills. Workplace knowledge skills. So these are the concepts and skills that are integrated into the 40 standards used in the employability and foundational academic skills for alternate assessment. That's a mouthful. It's hard to keep up with these acronyms. Now the CWEC process is a grade level process, and the progression starts at the primary level. And when I send you the progressions document, you'll see that. So your fellow teachers should be addressing some of these skills and concepts very early on, at the primary level, the intermediate level, the middle grade level, before you receive them in high school. Here is the least restrictive environment that I talked about. And the reason I highlighted this is, as you teach the 4 sequential courses that compose the CWEC certification process, for example, you may start, as Ms. Bartley did, with a student having a work experience there at the school. They need to acquire certain skill sets before you can, and be able to work independently before you can place them in opportunities out in the community at large. So I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about the least restrictive environment. And in the PowerPoint I'm going to send you, there's a slide that shows the different levels of a student moving through the CWEC process and those work-based learning experiences based on the least restrictive environment decision-making process. And again, it's going to be case by case. I am sure you're familiar with person-centered planning. There's lots of different opportunities. And KVEC is in the process of hiring a low incidence consultant. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I know that Cheryl historically always did these trainings. And you can see some of them here: path, maps, ASD problem solving model, compression planning. I know she did a lot of compression planning. These are all person-centered planning resources and models that you can reference and use as you work with your students in teaching these courses and orchestrating the work-based learning experiences for them. Going to move a little further down. There's a discussion here about vocational rehabilitation. And that's why I wanted to bring Ms. Jenkins in to do the presentation first to make those connections. But it was curious to me, and I didn't highlight this, but it talks about a CWTP person, and this really connects to Ms. Bartley's question about having a job coach, which really in some districts is that CWTP, Community Work Transitions Program Employment Specialist staff person, working directly with students, helping them acquire some of those transitions / work-based learning experiences. Pike County doesn't participate in the CWTP program. However, Floyd County does. I actually often work with Miss Lauren Lewis when I'm at a classroom at Floyd Central High School, for example. And she's been invaluable to them. So I thought it was interesting to me that it might be here, or it may be in the ESAR guide, but I should go ahead and mention it here, even though I may have it highlighted further down. But it talks about using the work that the CWTP person or a pre-ETS provider, which is pre-employment transition services provider, the documentation that we have to share with OVR as documentation for the work that you're doing through CWEC. And I know, Ms. Bartley, you have used my reports. What was curious to me is it's either further down in this document or the ESAR document, it talks about you have to be a little bit careful using that documentation because the work that I do, they say doesn't show outcomes. That's not necessarily true. So it'll be interesting moving forward as our work evolves in the pre-employment transition services arena, the documentation that we have to generate with the pre and post pre-ETS assessments. And when I do my reports, I have to talk about outcomes. So I think this is somewhat dated, is what I'm trying to say. So I think you, Ms. Bartley, found the reports that I shared on the work at Pike Central High School useful in your transition documentation. Correct?
We used a lot of it in place of the, what's the name of that program? It used to be an ILP, IGP, ILP. We used it in place of that information we must provide to prove that we've addressed transition.
Yep, exactly. Perfect. Thank you. I'm glad that was useful. And you weren't the only teacher that asked me for those reports that I have to provide to OVR monthly. So we're going to talk for just a couple minutes about coursework leading to CWEC. Here they are, developing career options. That's the first course. And they're in sequence. And they're in sequence for a reason, obviously. The second course is developing leadership skills. The course codes are there. I don't think that they've changed. And by the way, this CWEC document will probably be updated by KDE this fall, as well as the ESAR document. But here are the courses. And when we get close to 11 and we have some other teachers joining us, we'll probably talk about where you're at with these courses, your experiences. You may have some, you may have none. I know that there was a waiver for the work-based learning experiences late last year, even though we had a lot of teachers in the region who actually marshaled opportunities for students. So first course, developing career options. And I'm not going to read this to you. You know what that means. Second course is developing leadership skills. And these courses can be taught at any of the 9 through 14 grade bands. And Cheryl and I had an interesting conversation about what about those grade 14 students who already have a graduation code, and are they still participating? What if they've already acquired the ESAR, for example, and they've fulfilled all the CWEC obligations and criteria? Are they still participating? Of course. Why wouldn't they? You're just reinforcing skill sets that will help them moving forward once they age out of your low incidence classroom. So here is the third course, Experience in Workplace Principles, and that's to familiarize them with the different occupational opportunities. And we actually had the good fortune at Pike Central of doing the Career Interest Inventory Survey, and it's amazing because we use a 5-star instrument. It's picture-based, which makes it quicker, but it can be used really with any student, even though it's picture-based. When you see it and you think, oh my goodness, it's picture-based, that's only for low incidence students who may have verbal challenges. That's not necessarily the case. So, because as we worked our way through the different occupational profiles, it goes from limited job training being required to more job training to a 2-year degree to a 4-year degree, all the way through a graduate degree. So that has been helpful, and that would be an instrument and workshop that would fit really nicely into this third course, Experience in Workplace Principles, to determine their occupational profile. And I know the teachers, and I administered it in probably a half a dozen schools, thanks to Ms. Bartley's behest, because once we were successful at Pike Central, I started promoting it in other schools, and I administered it, and the teachers were amazed at how well it matched up with what they knew about their students based on that Career Interest Inventory Survey. The fourth course, Individualized Career Work Experience. And there's the course code, easy peasy. So, and of course, here is the work-based learning options section that talks about the different opportunities. And we all know that this is the big elephant in the room because of the resources available to us, our remoteness, our subruralness. Everything is more than a football field away from us. It's kind of challenging, but I'm going to send you, if you don't already have it, this work-based learning manual. It's about, I think, 5 megabytes, so it should go through your email. It's a little over 100 pages long, but it goes into great detail about these different work-based learning options, from cooperative education to entrepreneurship, to school-based entrepreneurship, to service learning. In fact, if you remember our low incidence region-wide transition conferences that we hosted this past year actually focused on service learning and job shadowing. So that was time that would have counted toward fulfilling those 40 hours. And we're going to do more of that this year. We're going to do more of that. And by the way, I should pause, since I'm talking about conferences, KVEC has asked me to bring back the region-wide transition conferences at Big Sandy. I just booked the entire campus for Friday, October 1st. That's not going to work for the Pike County schools because I think that's your fall break, because I have a copy of your calendar. So October 1st, and I've got October 8th and October 15th. So I've got 3 dates, 3 Fridays booked at Big Sandy Community and Technical College in Prestonsburg. Just like before, we did those conferences on that campus for 3 years, from 2017 through 2019, and they were fabulous. You've seen the video vignettes, and it's a professional conference for students with a focus on transition. And we have lots of different presenters. Vocational Rehabilitation will be there. The Carl D. Perkins Center staffers will be there. We'll have college folks there, et cetera, et cetera. So we're bringing that back October 1st, the 8th, or the 15th. I may do at least 2. I've been told that I won't get any help on the 15th because there's a region-wide director of special education meeting, so I may have to go solo if we elect that the 15th is good for some of our schools. Okay, so just to reiterate, we all know 40 hours a year per student. That sounds like a lot, but really it's not. And I think if you're just getting started with the CWEC, you're probably organizing your students to enjoy some school-based enterprise opportunities. You may not be taking them off campus. And be aware, our next presenter coming up in about 15 minutes is Alex Smith, who is one of our digital engineers. We have a lot of work-based learning experience workshops virtually that you can use. And I started building those out about a year ago. We have a bunch of them. We'll continue to build out more of them, but he's going to demonstrate some of those workshop activities. And I think you should tap into them, especially as we move into this year. And because of the resurgence of COVID, you may not be able to place your students out in the community doing anything. May not be possible. So, just some housekeeping with the Career Alternate Assessment folder, and the acronym is CRAF, the Career Ready Alternate Assessment folder. And I've highlighted the pieces of that. And you've probably already done this, but if you haven't, you need to take the quiz and become the QCA administrator. And usually it's the lead teacher with the caseload who becomes the qualified CWEC administrator, meaning you're the one who leads that effort, keeps those documents, and of course, just like anything else related to schools, it has to be protected per FERPA, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to go into great detail about that, but these are the components of the craft folder, for lack of a better description. And if I were you, obviously you're going to have a hard copy. You're going to have it tabbed by year, but I would also make sure I have an electronic copy as a backup. I think that would be very wise. So again, you're going to have this document. You may already have it, but good to have the latest, greatest version. And don't be surprised, and special education teachers are more in tune with audits than any other teacher, I believe. It's very possible that your folder, your craft folder, could be audited by someone internally, whether it's your building assessment coordinator or your district assessment coordinator or the director of your area technology center, because there is a responsibility on their part for fidelity to those educational standards, those CTE educational standards. So that's why it's really good to keep yourself organized. Now, some reporting deadlines as it relates to students who become certified in a given year. The reporting deadline is usually that first Friday in June. Now, this date is old. This was this past year. I suspect it will be June 3rd, but you'll receive that, I'm sure. And then here's some statewide fidelity information, because you cannot necessarily share this this information with just anybody. And if I'm being honest, the more people that take the quiz and receive the certification as an administrator, the better. That may not be feasible for some of your instructional assistants, but do pay a little bit of attention to the statewide fidelity section of this. Yeah, and that's about all I wanted to share. Now, Ms. Napier has several years of experience. Ms. Bartley has over 30 years of experience. Any comments or questions regarding the career work experience certification process. I see Mr. Branham has joined us. He will be weighing in here in a little while when we do the colloquium. Miss Hignite from Perry Central is with us. She's going to do a short little presentation in a bit. But before we move on to our next presenter, who is Alex Smith, one of our digital engineers, I want to make sure I spend just a few minutes on the ESAR, which is the instrument to assess the career work experience portion of career readiness. Any questions, any insight, anything you want to share? Ms. Bartley, I think you have the most experience, and I know that you've been very conscientious about trying to work your way through this. Any questions for Cheryl when she comes on later about any challenges with this process, with the career work experience certification process?
I think one of the things we're going to have to do to address, to help be more successful in this area, is we're going to have to get information in the hands of parents, because they're very afraid that our kids are going to lose their check if we get them employed. So we need to get that information in their hands about how they're allowed to make so much, and how maybe they will never be independently employed. Maybe it'll always be some level of support needed, which, you know, will put them in the competitive market. So we need to get some kind of information together to present to parents to make this participation more readily available for our students, because that's the number one thing I'm finding holding our kids back from participating.
Interesting.
I want to agree with that. Anytime I present anything to the parents, that's the first question I get is, how is this going to affect my child's check? I mean, that's sad, you know, that they look at it that way, but that is the way they view it. Is they want to know how any of these services will affect their child's check.
And in all honesty, they do have a valid argument, because maybe your kids can get employment, but maybe they can't maintain it. And they're afraid that once they get employment, they'll lose the check, and then they'll lose their income.
Yeah, it was similar in Lee County also. That was the parents' number one concern. And it was valid. You know, I would have some that were really concerned about their medical card. You know, my child has severe, you know, medical problems. I can't lose that card. So it was definitely a valid concern that they had, but it came up with almost every family.
But I have talked with, for instance, our Mountain Comprehensive Care Greenhouse supported workshop we have in Pike County. Students can go there and it doesn't affect their check or their medical card in any way. They make enough maybe to buy their lunch for that day, but it gives them a sense of purpose. It gives them a reason for getting out of the bed in the morning. It gives them a sense of pride that they can be productive. And they also have the opportunity to maintain relationships with others.
All right. Fabulous. Okay, we're going to switch gears. I'm just going to take a few minutes to direct your attention to the ESAR administration guide before we invite Alex Smith to come and do a little show and tell with us regarding some of the work-based learning experience virtual options that we're building out that are available. Wonderful. Thanks for all that great feedback. That's awesome. You know, I know that I've had those conversations, but it's good to hear it again. Okay, here's the Employability Skills Attainment Record Administration Guide. I sent this out. I'm going to send out another nice neat package. Again, this will be updated in the fall. And this is the instrument used to assess the I keep trying to call it CWCE. It's CWEC, the Career Work Eligibility. I'm getting lost in my acronyms. The Career Work Experience Certification, my goodness. These acronyms, especially for special education, are really tough to remember, even though they make perfect sense. So the ESAR, that's what everybody calls it, but it's the Employability Skills Attainment Record. I highlighted a few things. It's one of 4 components of the Kentucky Alternate Assessment, and there is a rating scale. The ESAR includes 30 items related to the following standards, and here they are. This is a really good document. It's not very long. It's really only about 14 pages. But employability and foundational academic skills for alternate assessment concepts and skills. See, my memory is not too bad for a 56-year-old. Here they are, 30 items. Personal qualities and people skills, foundational academic skills, workplace knowledge skills. And just as a kind reminder, I don't know where all of our schools are at with administering these courses. They're sequential, there are 4 of them. We already went over them, but you may just be starting them. That's perfectly wonderful. It's important to remember that a student can take the ESAR after completing 2 of the courses in their 11th grade year. Definitely want to administer it in their 12th grade year. Just like the CWEC certification, the lead teacher typically is the one who becomes the administrator for the ESAR and the corresponding assessment. And so there's a little quiz and you get the certificate and you put that in the craft folder. You keep all that documentation together. Easy peasy, it's not difficult. You probably don't have to even prepare for it given all your experience. We have very experienced teachers in our region. But here's something interesting to note, and you're probably aware that it looks like going into this year, we have upwards of 60 special education teachers who are currently enrolled in the Master of Arts in Teaching program. So it's going to be really important for us to do what we can to help mentor them, whether they're at our school or through some of our regional trainings that we experience or the cadre work. So please, as time permits in your schedule, be a mentor to some of these teachers who are going through that MAT program and they don't have the special education content knowledge, they're learning pedagogy. They come into the MAP program with a specific degree in another content area, so it really takes them a while to catch up. And special education is the hardest education degree to earn. In fact, I marshaled that program when I provided leadership for Morehead State University's academic outreach in Eastern Kentucky back in 2006, and I think I only could run about 2 groups of students before it faded away because students just found it to be too difficult. At that time through MSU, it was a 130 plus credit hour program. So in my opinion, special education teachers are the very best educators on the planet by virtue of the rigor of their coursework. So I applaud you for being a special educator. All right, so I highlighted this note right here on page 4. The ESAR is not administered to students with a graduation code, okay? However, if a student is assessed at multiple grades, the scores are stored by the KDE Office of Career and Technical Education until the student exits with a graduation code. The highest score will be selected for accountability. The benchmark, here's the benchmark, 37 out of 60. That's not too bad. And if you work at it, I think many of your students can meet this benchmark. I've been in lots of low incidence classrooms. Our teachers are superlative. They're working hard with their students, and I'm sure that you will continue to have success with students meeting this ESAR benchmark. There's some discussion here about the instructional team. You know all this stuff as it relates to the ARC and the instructional assistants, as well as other educational specialists that may be involved, whether it's a speech pathologist or a psychologist, but those folks may very well be a part of that team who helps make decisions in scoring that ESAR assessment, or at least contributing information that will help the lead teacher who is the administrator. All right, here's the due date, per KVE, this will change. I think it's a Friday in May. This will obviously be updated. These two documents, the CWEC and the ESAR, should be updated for 2021-22 later this fall. But as I talked to Cheryl about what to expect, she said she didn't think that there would be many changes at all. It'll stay static. Here's the rating scale. 0 does not demonstrate skill. 1, developing prompting. And this was interesting to me. Under the rating scale of 1, if a student can demonstrate a skill occasionally but not consistently, then the skill should be rated as a 1, developing supported. So that caught my eye. And even with a 2, which is the highest rating on the ESAR per concept area, note that the student may use some type of support. So yes, 2 is independent mastered, but there may be a little bit of support there as well. This was curious to me. At the worksite, some ESAR test items are scored based on performance at a worksite. This caught my attention as well. For careers found only in educational settings, the placement should be outside the student's school of attendance. So Ms. Bartley's example of the student who's been working with the building custodian, that's not a career pathway that's just found in an educational setting. So it doesn't apply, right? So supporting evidence based on direct observation, obviously, and progress monitoring data, which you're intimately familiar with. The general instructional cycle, I highlighted some things, and you'll have this highlighted document. Just again, I was trying to prepare to share this content through the lens of a teacher who may not, who may have been through this training before, the longer version, and just needed a refresher. But obviously, yep.
I have one short question. You were talking about the beyond the school work site performance.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it's during the school day, does the regular school insurance cover our children while they're beyond the school building itself? Because that was a big barrier to our ability to get into some businesses. And that's a pretty valid concern for a business owner. What kind of insurance coverage do we have over our children while they're in that business doing the performances?
Yep. I've made a note here. Let's ask Cheryl when she comes on. She's going to be with us at about 11:30. Sound good? I'm sure she's had that question asked to her. I don't want to speculate, but you've already identified that it was a problem with your school and district, so I don't know if that's uniform across all districts. Let's see. Great question. Thank you, Ms. Bartley. Obviously, in the general instructional cycle, you're embedding the employability and foundational academic skills for alternate assessment into the curriculum. That is a given. And you're all master lesson planners, so you've got all the resources and content that you need to create those courses and lesson plans and modify them based on the individual needs of your students, which to me is a daunting task on some levels, but at the same time, I believe it's what makes your work as an educator in a special education classroom so much more interesting, because there's a ton of diversity. Whereas, I'm a history professor by trade, and even though I've taught a lot of different areas of history, by virtue of having a PhD in history, I'm authorized to teach anything at the university level. And that's one thing that I enjoyed about the university pathway, is I had a lot of flexibility. I wasn't locked into just being an Americanist, for example. Now, obviously, I have to prep up if I'm teaching something I haven't taught in a while, or if it's something new, but I have the skill sets to be able to do that. And I think our core content teachers who are teaching math, science, reading, English language arts per grade band level, they don't get to enjoy as much diversity of content as you do. And I think that's one of the things that I like about this, the CWEC/ESAR process for alternate assessment, is there's a lot of diversity. The challenge obviously is time, manufacturing the time to get this done. I mentioned when we were going over the CWEC guidance document that if you're using any data from employment specialists or someone who comes and does a workshop like me, who's considered a pre-employment transition services provider, you can use it as long as it shows outcomes. And this is somewhat dated because it infers that the work that we do doesn't show outcomes. That's not true anymore. So our work has evolved. I have to show outcomes or I don't get to do the work. So just know that you can use anything that I do, and I can provide any documentation regarding outcomes, not just from the pre and post pre-ETS assessments, but also other reports that I generate for the state through the work that I do in your schools when we host the workshops together. Let's see. Yep, even though a student may master a skill, it's always good to do maintenance checks. And here's a section on instructional team consensus. And what struck me is if you can't, as an instructional team, come to consensus on rating the student through the ESAR process, the lowest of the ratings being considered must be assigned to the item. That caught my attention, so I highlighted it. I'm not going to go into great detail with test security. It's all very intelligible. You're familiar with this by virtue of the work that you do as a special educator, but this is a big deal. And so you'll have this document on your desktop. And for those who are on your instructional team who may not be certified as ESAR or CWEC administrators, but will have access and be part of the conversations regarding students' career readiness, they need to sign a non-disclosure statement. So, and again, I'm probably preaching to the choir. Craft components, that's the same as the CWEC. So you're familiar with that. CRAFT, that acronym stands for Career Ready Alternate Assessment Folder. Career Ready Alternate Assessment Folder. A lot of work, but I'm trying to simplify it for you a little bit. I already talked about that. Grade 12, grade 14, they can take the ESAR assessment if they've completed 2 of the 4 courses in grade 11. Okay, I think that's about it. And there's more reporting deadlines and summary of the steps. This is useful. So if you want a little quick refresher about your responsibilities as a lead teacher for the ESAR, here they are on page 13. This is very helpful, I thought. I'm not going to read them. Yep, there we go. And QEA, that acronym stands for, let me find it, make sure I don't misspeak. Qualified ESAR Administrator. Yeah, too many acronyms. Okay, regarding the ESAR, any questions, comments? You will have this. You're familiar with it, I'm sure, but I just wanted to do a little refresher. I hope my highlights helped. It helped me in kind of preparing to share this content. Any comments before we move on to Alex? Nope. Okay. Do we need a 5-minute break? Or are we good? Okay, we're gonna keep rolling. All right, let me go flag our digital engineer.
I'm over here. Well, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, there he is. All right.
All right. Let's see. I cannot see my. Let me make sure everything's looking right. All right. Howdy, everybody. My name's Alex Smith. I'm one of the hauler technicians here at KVEC. And today I'm going to be going over some of the VR experiences that we've created with Will. He's helped us out along the way. And when I say VR, hopefully that's not confusing, because I know a lot of the stuff you all say, I hear Will say OVR and VR a lot. I'm talking about virtual reality. So I'm sure that's not the same thing. But we started this summer creating some virtual reality experiences. We did some work-based learning experiences, like some garage experiences, some electrician stuff like that. And I'll be showing that to you here in a second with our headset. So you'll see me looking goofy for about 10 or 15 minutes doing that. And then I'll tell you about what we're working on now. So Will, are we ready for the virtual reality part, I reckon? All righty. Okay, let me go ahead and make sure it's working here for me.
Yep, Shannon's with me, he's helping.
Let me share my screen. Looks like I'll be able to do that. All right, so let me go ahead and start our experience up here. Awesome. So right now this experience is in the beta phase, so it's not completely finished. There's still some polish we need to do, but we're working on something else now. We're pretty excited, so we're gung-ho on that. Is everyone seeing what I'm seeing? Seeing my hand, seeing the VR?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is pretty much just our lobby area. You've got a little watch on your hand. Let's see. I don't think you're seeing everything I see, so I'll try to keep that in mind. But like it just tells you to choose the job. So you look around the room here. I don't know if you're seeing there, like you see garage, paint shop, and if I turn, hey, Adrian or somebody, someone want to help me with the controls here? It's just the aspect ratio is off, so when I'm screen sharing, they're only seeing like a portion. So here, help me with the controls. Okay. With the controls, doing that, please. Right here, I've got Adrian Smith. He's another one of the hauler technicians here. He's just going to help me with the controls. The resolution's a little off with the Zoom recording, so it's just making things look a little funny. All right, so like I said, we have HVAC, electrical, plumbing. Let's turn me around, Adrian. Go ahead and turn around. There you go. And then we got garage and paint shop. Let's go ahead, head to the garage, Adrian. We'll show them what that one looks like.
What happened to the pizza place?
Yeah, grab the door here. Yeah. Oh, we have pizza too. I think I heard you say something like that, Will.
Oh, yeah.
Pizza time. Yeah, we call it pizza time. That one's not really complete. That's why this is in beta. That's the only experience we haven't completed yet. So let me go and grab the door.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I'll grab the door for you.
How about I just
All right. So you grab the door and it teleports you to a new area. And this here is the garage area. So we've got a car, we've got our air wrench over there, and then our tire. And this tire is supposed to be flat. And it looks kind of flat. Hey, just tell me whenever I'm out. So
no, it's good. You can see.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and run through this. Let me back up a little bit so I make sure I don't hit the table. I've got my computer on. So I've got my wrench here. Hit that little trigger. You know, it does little wrench things. Let's push this up here. All right, that's as high as it goes. And we'll switch hands because I'm right-handed. And you pretty much just change the tire. You take all the lugs out. And it's a fairly simple. We've got all this text here that explains it, but all the stuff's got little prompts as you go through it. Like your lug count is 5, so I need to take each one of these lug nuts out here. And yeah, and I've lost I'm sure, there's my wrench. Let me pick that up. All right, so take that one out. And then once I take that out, I'm able to remove the tire. We can just super throw that over there and put the new tire on. And then all you do now is you replace the lugs. So just put those lugs back on, just like that. And once you put all the lugs on and you screw them back in, you're prompted with a success message. And I'll show you that here in a second. Like I said, it's in beta, so there's some things that like to be a little, whoa. All right, there we go. Let me get my wrench here. VR's fun. I don't know if anyone's ever done VR, but it's a lot of fun. So there we go, success. There's a little sound it makes, and we can leave this one. My two favorite that we've created thus far are, it's the garage experiences, which we have, you know, the tire change, and then we also have paint shop. And paint shops, it's pretty fun. I like the way it works. So let's go ahead, open that door here. And all right, so we've got a truck bed here. And you can change it. Right now, I think we just have a truck bed and a car door. So we can paint a car door or a truck bed. And I'm gonna do the car door because it's a little smaller and you get that done a little quicker. Over there, let's see, let me make sure y'all are seeing it, right? Yeah, over there we have the percent you paint. So let me just, you press one of these triggers here and you start painting the car. So yeah, it's pretty simple. Most of these experiences, it's just like you just have to press one or two buttons. And if you press A, it tells you your objectives. So, you know, grab your paint tool, press the trigger to paint, and then, you know, paint your car. And we have a completion criteria on this experience. So once you get like 97%, I think it's pretty much completion on painting the car. And yeah, students are able to just run through this. We wanted to build out this experience a bit more and put more objects to paint, let students change the paint color and all of that. But yeah, it's pretty fun. We've enjoyed creating these experiences, and we plan to create a lot more. Let's see, let me run you through one. Well, Will, did you want me to run through all of them, or did you want to just run through a couple more?
A couple more would be fine.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll run you through HVAC. Or yeah, let's run you through HVAC real fast. So the HVAC is, we're gonna have warnings too before we ship this off to schools with Will, or if we do any workshops with them. We're gonna put warnings up because with HVAC, it's a bit more dangerous and you really don't wanna go mess around with this stuff, but this is supposed to give students a sort of first time experience doing this stuff, kind of seeing if they enjoy it or if it's something they could get into. So with this one, what we have is we have our manifold gauge, and then we have our HVAC unit here and a refrigerant. So you've got low pressure, you've got these valves on the back that you need to hook up kind of like you would a real HVAC unit when you're recharging the Freon, or I think it's called refrigerant. So the low pressure valve will go to the low pressure port down here, and then you'll hook up the high pressure valve right here to the high pressure port. And then let's go ahead and hook the refrigerant one up here, and that's just, so everything's hooked up there, so now I don't have to hook anything up. We put little fun things in here too, like you can turn the fan on with the press of a button. You don't really have a reason to. There's sound playing too, and I don't think the sound will go through with the way I'm sharing it. But when the students in the experience, there's environmental sounds, and whenever they do all this stuff, there's sound effects to let them know that they're doing things correctly. All right, so now we've got everything hooked up. Let's go ahead and turn this valve to on. There we go, it's on now. We gotta turn this one to on too. And now we're getting some readings on our gauges because before they were all down here. So now you just have to pretty much fill your gauges, and you just set these valves to on, and since we have a refrigerant plugged up, it should, oh wait, I'll have to turn the valve on. All right, and now it will start filling up, and when it gets in this little orange meter here, that's how you know you're good. So once it gets there, you just want to set that to off. And again, you can check each one of these, every time we load into a new job, it shows your objectives. So that's that was something we wanted to get made. And yeah, some other things we want to add is like a narrator and maybe subtitles. So students who, you know, are hard of hearing or anything like that, they have a little easier time with this, and we completed it. Good job. So this, you know, just basic experiences kind of give students an opportunity to, you know, mess with these technologies and these skills in VR in their classroom. So it just makes things a little easier there. We won't worry about pizza time because I think it's very fairly basic. Let's do electrical. All righty. And if anybody ever wants to do VR, you know, the studio I'm in right now is we call it the virtual hauler. We do a lot of VR here, so come on over to Hazard and we'll let you experience VR if you haven't. So on this one, this is like a little tutorial stage for the electrical level. You just pretty much have to grab a wire and put it in. It highlights, so if I let go of it, that's kind of like how you know where to put the wire, because this one and when we let students play with it, it got a little confusing, so we kind of made it a little easier on them. As you get close to these wires, you've got your breaker box, you've got your outlet, and then you got your light itself. So we're going to wire all those up, and that's pretty much what we're trying to simulate here in this experience. So we've got wires coming out from the bus bar, and we just need to pretty much plug them up where they go. So this is, you may have to forgive me on some of the terminology because it's been a minute since I worked on this one. So neutral wire, the neutral wire in the neutral bus bar, and then the main power to the breaker, booyah. And these light up as you do it. And then you'll want to put the ground in the ground bus bar. And then as you plug all the main wires into their coordinating bus bars, these wires will start showing up. So we want to plug the ground, make sure it's hooked up there. You want to plug your neutral into the neutral bar. And then finally, to get power to everything, you want to plug the black power bar, the hot wire, to everything. And then you'll have this insulated Romex strip, which is, carries all three of those wires to, an outlet. So you'll carry that here, booyah. And that's pretty cool. We're moving along, and now we've got our switch here, and we need to hook everything up into the switch to get, to get proper power to everything. So with the ground up there, your neutral, and like I said, everything highlights. So we try to make it not as confusing. So right there, plug that up there, and then you want to plug your hot into your switch, and then you'll have more wires show up here, main hot there, and neutral into the cap. We had an electrician. We have an electrician on staff here at KVEC, and he kind of helped us. Yeah, that's the only reason I know most of the terminology is because he told me most of it. I'm not an electrician by trade, so he's pretty much approved of all this terminology and the setup. So that's pretty cool. We when we did this, we wanted to be as close to the real as possible because we don't want to be misguiding students or misrepresenting a profession. So, and then you'll plug this in here and your neutral in there. And if everything's plugged up right, we will have power. So let's flick the switch and see. Woo! So yeah, it just changes colors. I hate that I don't have the sound going for y'all because half the fun is the sound effects. And there you go. So we're finished with electrical. Now we can leave it.
Great.
All right. So let's leave that one. And let's see. Let's show you. I can't show you pizza time.
I'll tell you what, Alex. Can we?
What?
Can we talk about the mock
interview
simulator? Can we move there?
You want to talk about the interview simulator?
Yes. Can you show them anything?
Can I show you? I don't know if I can. I might be able to show you. I can show you a beta of what we had, but I don't know if I can show you anything. Let me get out of this one. Here. Okay, wait. Oop.
And before you do that, you might want to take them to my. You could take them to my transition.
I'll finish up in the headset real fast, and then we'll switch off to to show them the transition site.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that the last piece, probably?
Yeah. Let me see if this one works. I don't know. This was an early test of our interview simulator, and I'll see if I can show you that one real fast. This may be the right one. We'll see in a second. This was very beta phase. Actually alpha, which is even earlier. All right, well that's not the right one. This is just a test or something. Yeah, we built a lot of VR. We built a lot of experiences here in VR. That's primarily what we dev with. We don't really build anything for PCs if we can help it. But all right, this should be the right one. And this might just give you a general idea of what we're going for. We completely rebuilt it from what you'll probably see right here if it loads up. Yeah, so I'm backwards right now. So if I turn around, like I said, this has been completely rebuilt, but the general idea is the student will put the headset on and they're going to be able to choose their profession, like which profession are they interested in. And that's going to change the general lay of the land. So there's going to be items corresponding to each specific job. And the interviewer, when the interviewer comes in, which it's going to be Will, or if a school decides they want to own the simulator, then they'll be the avatar. But whoever the interviewer is, they're going to come in with that outfit, so students kind of get in the feel that that's the job they're interviewing for. So right now, I think we have the job options are like police officer, teacher, mechanic, electrician, and I think nurse or doctor or something. So that's the general props we're making right now. As we build this out and as people give us feedback, we're going to build that out further. But for the student, just pretty much they'll have their hands. They're not going to have these hands. Oculus has a cool technology now to where if I was to drop these controllers, I don't know if this one's turned on, you'll be able to use, students will see their real hands in the VR application. So that's how we're going to, so Will be able to see their hands, and if they're like students that talk with their hands, Will or whoever the interviewee is will be able to see that. So they'll be able to see kind of how students' body language is when they're in an interview. Are they nervous? Do they move a lot? Are they like me and they get way too hyper? So yeah, so that's gonna be interesting. This was just, like I said, what you see here now is not what it looks like at all now. It looks man, it looks amazing. I wish I had more to show you, but we're kind of gonna do a surprise release hopefully at the end of the month. So yeah, so hopefully more on that.
Yeah, if I could,
we're going to build that out. And
Alex,
once
the premise behind this, we started working on this back in the wintertime, conceptually. And if you think about the mock interview simulator, it fits perfectly into the third CWEC course, the experience and workplace principles. So take full advantage of this. What Alex's twin brother, Adrian, who you saw in the scene a little bit ago, is amazing. What he's doing is amazing. My avatar will have a suit. And again, the premise behind this is creating a very comfortable environment in which students can go through an interview process, because we know our students are very shy and reserved. So they're comfortable with technology. I've done a lot of work in schools using technology, so this could be a really great splash for us. So I look forward to piloting it this year in your schools, and special thanks to Alex and Adrian and Jacob for working on it. Did I miss anybody? Who else has contributed?
Well, we got Chad. Chad's made some models, and I'm sure we'll stick Tanner in as the tester. So, but as we build that out, though, hopefully y'all will be able to give us some professional guidance. If anything we're missing with that, after we finish working on the VR simulator, the interview simulator, we're going to work on some. What's the word you use? Soft skills, or what's the word?
Yes, life skills.
Life skills, yeah.
So students,
we're going to start building some life skills experiences, like washing the dishes, loading up a washer and dryer, just things like that. Because like Will said, students today, they're more comfortable with technology than they are with social interaction. So that's the reason when we were thinking of things we could build out in VR, an interview just made sense, because when students get in their game chats and they start talking, they can talk like they've talked like they're best friends on the other side of that microphone. So it just seemed to make sense to make something like an interview simulator. So yeah, we're excited to work with Will, and we're excited to, if y'all have any ideas, feel free to shoot them to Will, and maybe we can talk. Maybe there's something else we can develop. So yeah.
Great. All right, take them to the transition site real quick and show them what's
All
on.
right, I think I've already got it up here. Let me see.
And there are a
Yeah,
number of teachers and schools who used some of these work-based learning experiences toward the students' work-based learning hours.
Okay. Yeah, so right here, this is I'm on the holler.org, which is our website, and I'm on Will's transition page here. And I'm sure if you all need the link to this, we'll email it to you, or I can, whatever you need. But this is the transition site that we built out for Will, you know, brought to you by KVEC. And then we got a nice little picture of Dr. Will there. And here we actually have some slideshows of all of the things Will does whenever he's in schools, and some of the VR experiences that we take to the students when we visit them. So that's pretty cool. Whole little slideshow there, and you can check out the full photo set on our Flickr. We post everything on our Flickr, all our photos, so students or teachers or parents can download anything they need. So yeah. And if we scroll down here a little further, we have the 5 categories here, like career exploration, post-secondary education, counseling, work-based learning, workplace readiness, and self-advocacy. So if you click these, they're going to take you.
Learning, Alex. I'm sorry. Click on
Which
work-based.
one? You want to do work-based?
Work-based learning. Yep, that's the one
Okay.
that I'm most interested in for the sake of today's CCR-AA training.
Awesome. So yeah, if you click any of these, they'll take you to a Google form, and students will be able to fill those out. Let me show you real fast that. So yeah, you click that, it's going to take you to a Google form that has our videos inserted. And then they'll also have, once they do that, I think they have little quizzes they can finish here, and then they'll submit that. And that the results of those quizzes go directly to Will. So Will knows every time a student finishes one of these out.
And it generates a certificate for them.
Yeah, it generates a certificate as well. Anything you want to show here, Will? But we've got tons of videos.
Nope, that's just a good snapshot. And they're familiar with this, but I thought it would be good to just refresh their memory that this is available, and we continue to add to it. So as we move forward, we'll add more of these little video, these work-based learning video vignette experiences, and they typically last 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most, so they're not real long. There's maybe one that's a little bit lengthy. I think it's the paint and frame one. The gentleman is just a great storyteller, and I just didn't have the heart to cut him off. So
yeah, he was that shepherd. He was a good guy. Yeah, all these videos of the holler. I don't know if Will's told you all about the holler, but we pretty much do anything you can think of with schools. We will video them. We'll highlight their innovations. We go to schools. We host workshops. We'll build camps out for schools if there's a certain thing they can't get and they need. So yeah, this right here was actually videos shot by our cameraman Adrian Smith and the team. So yeah, we're a fully staffed professional video and photo team. So if y'all ever need us for anything in your school, just let us know. We offer all sorts of services. So just if there's any questions, you can just email me at alex@theholler, and I'll put my email down in the chat just in case anybody has any questions that they don't want to ask here, or anything that they come up with after the meeting today. So yeah.
all right, thank you, Alex, for all your great leadership, and I hope everybody enjoyed that. Any questions for Alex?
I think it'd be interesting if you could develop a workshop that would give kids a chance to choose what would be a socially appropriate thing to say to respond, like in the developing the career options course, the first course, because that way we can get those skills for the appropriate social and job related conversations. That's one of the skills that we need to work on in the developing career options. Like when someone says this, what would be an appropriate choice to say back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm making notes, Miss Bartley.
That's a good idea. I've never thought about that. That would be fantastic. And that's something too. We can when we build out we're going to have tons of questions in our interview simulator. So I mean, that's something we when we're running through that with students, that we can practice with them. So thank you. That's a good recommendation.
Well, that just put a bee in my bonnet, as it were. I believe moving forward, because we've been trying to brainstorm about what to build out virtually. And perhaps we look closely at these 4 courses that teachers will be teaching, and there are areas within those 4 courses that we could build out virtual experiences. Ms. Bartley just mentioned the first course, but I'm sure as we move through those courses and look at the different skills that students are required to attain, that we can probably contribute some more virtual experiences. So Alex, a note to ourselves to revisit these 4 courses and the concepts that are in them, and look for opportunities to build out. Does that sound good, Ms. Bartley? So before we move to the colloquium portion of this program, I asked our colleague, someone I have worked with for several years in OVR from Perry Central High School, to share what she has been doing through the Community Work Transitions Program and the referral process, because there's just a lot of pieces and parts to the work that we do.
Yes.
So Ms. Hignite has a lot of experience, and she's been a terrific colleague, and I work consistently throughout the year with her and her students. And by the way, Ms. Hignite, thank you for being such a good colleague, sending me the list of the students that graduated. I know that was a big list. Perry Central High School is a big school.
Yeah.
And thank you all, Mr. Branham, and for doing that for me. OVR is trying to clean up its data sets. The process for my work is different in that I have to schedule a workshop with a teacher or team of teachers, and then I have to get a roster, even though I may have worked with those students in the past, and I've got to get that pre-approved monthly. So I think that's going to make it a little challenging for my work, and we'll just do the best we can. So I can only send in for pre-approval those students that I'm going to be working with. And some of those students may not show up for whatever reason. They may not be there that day, or they may not be able to be pulled out of one of their core content classes for a workshop. But this is a bit of a new process, and you'll see me send that out to everybody. My work has basically stayed the same, but the administrative pieces that I have to go through to actually get to work with teachers and students has changed. And since we've got pretty much everybody here on a very positive note, it's important for you to know that this year I'm doing the pre-employment transition services work directly with students and teachers 100 days. And my new role for 120 days is working to enhance the transition capacity of our teachers in the region. So that's a new piece of work that's been approved by the Kentucky Department of Education under our special education division here at the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative. So I look forward to building those opportunities out for you. So we're talking about direct services to teachers. So, and a kind reminder on that note, we have booked the Big Sandy Community and Technical College campus in Prestonsburg for Friday, October 1st, Friday, October 8th, and Friday, October 15th as possible region-wide transition conference days. So I've got the whole campus just like what you experienced before. It is awesome. I don't think that, because the last one I led was in the fall of 2019, I don't think Miss Napier or Mr. Wallen from Floyd Central got to experience that. But your colleagues there, Miss Laura Smallwood, who's now Miss Laura Bentley, she brought probably 2 bus loads of students to those conferences. Just invaluable. It's a professional conference for students, and I'm going to make sure that there are some ed sessions there for teachers as well. So you can look forward to that this fall. But I'm going to hush because we want Miss Crystal Hignite from Perry Central High School, Perry County Schools, to share with us a little bit about the work that she does there. She's been doing that work for several years. And then she's going to go over the steps of making connections between students and vocational rehabilitation when they are eligible and ready.
Yes. So I want to go ahead and book October the 15th because that is my birthday. So I expect a birthday celebration. Just saying. But I am Crystal Hignite, guys. I do work here with the Perry County Schools. I am the employment specialist for the district. This year I have a new colleague. He's going to step in and I'm going to help him learn the tricks of the trade, and hopefully we will have some more kids coming from some of our other high school, because we only have the two, but try to get them involved also. So Will's asked me to talk about some transition services today, which is the next step after the pre-ETS that everyone does. I do the pre-ETS here mostly with freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. I do still do some pre-ETS with the seniors, but it's at limited quantities because of the transition services that OVR is wanting us to do. And it is required of my program, which is the Community Work Transition Program. So the goal of the CWTP program is for participating students to gain the skills that are needed for competitive and integrated employment before exiting high school. Transition services they begin when the student is a junior in their junior year, and they continue until either their last year, which is their senior year, or their exiting year if they're grade 14, or till they exit out at 21. These students will continue to get both pre-ETS and the transition services at the same time. But like I said a few minutes ago, pre-ETS is kind of more behind, especially if it's in something that they need to work on. That's when I come back in and we go back and work on some of those pre-ETS skills. So I'm going to start with the 6 steps that it takes and the OVR requires us to do for the transition services. And we call them the flow of service, really. Instead of 6 steps, we just kind of say the flow of services. So the first step is called a CVA, which is a comprehensive vocational assessment. This assessment is done by me, the employment specialist, or another employment specialist in the district that you have. We begin we gather all of our documents, the IEPs, the 504s, whatever the kid has. And then we gather all of our information that we've learned over the years working with the kids in pre-ETS. And we sat down to make an IPE, which is the Individualized Plan of Employment. This plan goes in with the comprehensive vocational assessment. The purpose of this assessment is to determine the students' strengths, their resources, their interests in a job, even if they want a job, and if so, what job they're interested in, and also any concerns that them or their parents may have. Once the IPE, or the Individual Plan of Employment, is complete, that and the comprehensive assessment is both sent to my OVR counselor. All of the information that I've gathered for her and sent to her is then looked over by my OVR, and she is the one that makes the final decision. Is this student ready for transition services? It's not left up on me to say, yes, this kid is ready. It's sent to my OVR. Like I said, she has the final decision to either put this kid in transition services or keep them in pre-ETS for a little bit longer. But all this again begins in their junior year. This is when the OVR counselor wants each student to begin transition services. So our second step in transition is our job development and job coaching meetings. Okay, these meetings take place, again, not in the beginning of their junior year, but the end of their junior year, that last semester before they become seniors. During the meeting, we're going to have myself, the employment specialist, we're going to have the student present, we're going to have the OVR counselor also present, along with a parent or guardian or any kind of special ed staff that, a teacher or anyone else that has any kind of relationship or knowledge of the kid here at school. Anybody to help that kid further along in the transition. In the meeting that we're having here, the job development coaching meeting, we're discussing that CVA that I was talking about, that comprehensive vocational assessment that I just gave to my OVR. Now, if she's approved this is the meeting we're having with, like I said, the student, the parents, myself. During this, we're talking about job development activities for the student that pertain to vocational goals that are set by our OVR counselor. We're talking about also any kind of supports that the student may need to aid them in the success of gaining successful employment, supportive employment. Any concerns, again, by the parent or the student at this time are going to be talked about, or any kind of accommodations that need to be made in a job placement is going to be talked about in this meeting. After that meeting, we move on to our third step, which is monthly activities that we need to plan, and we go over, and we're working at all these steps very closely with our OVR counselor. This whole entire process is about a 6-month process. That's why they want us to start it early, because I know I spent last year about 45 days on one student just getting his comprehensive evaluation ready to go to my OVR, because I wanted this kid to succeed. So we need to make sure we have all the information we have, all the ins and outs, you know, T's crossed, I's dotted, just to make sure we're making sure the kid is successful. But like I said, step 3 is the coaching, the monthly activities. This is where we begin with what we know about the student, what we've learned in pre-ETS. You know, every one of us know these kids are like our own kids. We know their ins and outs, and what they like and what they don't like. So using what we have learned from working there, we're going to go on and talk about resume development a little farther. We're going to really get into it and make sure they know. I know here I work a lot with my kids on a personal information. I do a sheet a week, making sure they know their names and addresses, and even down to their clothing size, medications that they have to have. If they're going to try to seek some type of employment, these are things they need to know for sure. We're going to look into farther networking, teaching them how to network themselves. We're going to talk about those interviews, getting a little bit more in depth on prepping. These are things I do in pre-ETS, but are really, really tight down and make, I stress a lot of this to them, that the main goal here is to try to be as independent as we possibly can. So during all these meetings that we're having with OVR and all these lessons that I'm doing with the kids, as an employment specialist, I'm still assessing this child along the way. I'm making sure that if this plan didn't work for him, what can I do to change that? What's going to make him more comfortable moving into the next transition step or into full-time employment? So the next step in the transition is the exit meeting. Now, the only time that we actually have an exit meeting is when the kid has, or the student actually has, a job, whether it be 2 hours a week going to work for a bakery in your neighborhood, or a groomer's. If they have a job that 2 hours is all it takes, you have to have an exit meeting before they exit high school. If it's their senior year or they're 21 and aging out. Who is going to attend this meeting is the same people that attended that first one. It's going to be the parent and the guardian, the student, my OVR, and then an employment specialist. And again, any supportive staff you have at your school. We talk about how the kid is doing at this job, if they feel like they need any more supports there, if they need any accommodations. We're making sure that they have proper transportation back and forth there. If that's needed, then we need to help them figure that out. Then our next step is going to be job placement and the report. Now this again is only something that we do if the student has a job. These last 2 steps were 4 and 5. The student is employed at least 1 day or 2 hours a week. This is another report that we have to file. If the student is completely employed, we also have to fill out this file. And again, this is just a step that is just plainly a report that the employment specialist has to do, or the teacher that is referring to OVR services. And then our last step is our employment follow-up. This is when we go in as employment specialists We monitor the student's progress at the job. We work with and ask questions to the student's employer. We make sure, once again, that the student is handling everything okay, that if they're showing up on time, that they are, having success as far as understanding the job, having the right transportation and such things like that. We try to phase out during this last step also any of the supports that we've done ourselves, including us. Because during this whole transition as an employment specialist, I'm there supporting that kid 100% of the way, helping them with anything that's needed or trying to help them in just a simple change of something. Also, we're going to try to phase out the natural supports also there in the job. But that's the last step. So, I mean, there's just 6 little flow steps that we go through. Each step that we do as an employment specialist, we bill OVR counselors for those. For us on our end, unless something else changes, it's a couple $1,000s a kid. But these kids deserve this, since the pre-eds is great. We learn and teach a lot in that pre-eds. But for the kids that are really seeking, again, a 2 hours a week or, a couple days a week job to give them that sense of purpose and independence, the transition part of the CWTP program, I feel like is a great success for these kids.
Awesome. And if I can interject, there are some direct parallels between what the CWTP folks do in this referral process, which is a pretty good chunk of time, and the career work experience certification process, which includes the 4 courses and the corresponding work-based learning experiences. So obviously, if you're a high school that has an employment specialist, you have an added resource, obviously, based on what Ms. Hignite just shared. If you don't have a CWTP, Community Work Transition Program employment specialist, then you're really covering some of these steps through the career work experience certification process and those courses and the corresponding work-based learning experiences annually, as well as your vocational rehabilitation counselor is picking up some of those pieces if there's not a CWTP person in place. So what a luxury it is to have a CWTP person. And that was a terrific presentation. We have in the chat box, Crystal, where some teachers asked for you to send those steps to me.
Okay, I can.
And I'll send them out because, again, there are parallels that match up very nicely depending upon whether or not you have an employment specialist or not. So I think that would be a good reference point for them as they move through this career ready pathway for alternate assessment, which is what this program this morning has been all about. So thank you. Any questions for Ms. Hignite about what she does, those steps, parallels, connections? And you're going to hear me say, as I work with you and your students in schools, that OVR wants me to focus more, because I just do the pre-employment transition services, on 9th and 10th graders, depending on how much experience they've had to date. So you're gonna, and Crystal's presentation bears that out as far as the rationale behind those changes to what I do in schools.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hignite. Happy
I'll see
Friday.
you soon.
By the way, I wanted to say, Crystal and I have been friends and colleagues for a long time. She's taking her son to MSU.
Yes.
We're taking our daughter, who's in the Craft Academy, Sunday. So, and I just want to tell you, Crystal, I think you're a wonderful mother.
If you see me crying on the side of the road, just throw me a tissue.
You're a wonderful mom. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
I need to hush, and this is an opportunity for us to take a little bit of time so that you, as practitioners, educational practitioners, can share through a colloquium format of sorts best practices where you're at with the career work experience piece, the courses, the work-based learning experiences, everything's on the table. So I need to hush. I've talked too much. I want you all to please share with each other, ask questions of each other. Where are you at? What are you doing? What are you, and don't be shy about saying, I haven't done much of anything, because I know that there's some great teachers that I've worked with who have not had an opportunity for lots of different reasons to do much in this area. We've got Dr. Julia Bishop, who has just changed schools. So she's going to have to start over again, even though she was certainly doing some things at Lee County Middle High School. So I'm going to make some notes too, because I think it will help. Okay, go ahead. The floor is open.
I just want to say.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to say that there's a lot of these things that I've done through the courses, but I didn't document them correctly. So I need to see if there's some place. I know that I saw somewhere a listing of all the skills that we're supposed to address in each one of those courses. I saw that listing somewhere. We need to fix up some kind of check sheet that allows for us to document the dates that we address those, so that we can put that in the folder. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
So with the ESAR and the CWEC, those things are still relatively new to me. I mean, those are just a couple years, right? A couple years that have been implemented, I think. And for me, in my experience, I've not had to do as much with it due to COVID, due to virtual. And that's one of my questions for you guys is like, what are you guys doing for your virtual students? How are you meeting these needs? And of course, that was optional this past year in regards to toward the end of the year and having to file that or whatever. But what are you guys doing for your virtual kids that are having to do CWEC and ESAR? How are we putting these experiences?
Last year, Dr. Will helped quite a bit with that. He provided several workshops in my classroom, and we connected through Zoom or through Google Meet.
Yeah.
And that we documented a lot of skills that we addressed that way.
Right.
But of course, this year, Pike County schools are not allowing these non-diploma students to do virtual. So they all must be in person this year. So we won't have to address that as much.
Yeah. I just wonder what's going to happen, especially with the rise in cases and, if there's a potential for us we have to have a game plan if we do end up going back to some form of virtual. And for me, I don't know what that's going to look like.
I've addressed this question to my special ed director, and as of right now, she told me that this is an optional thing, that some students may not choose this certification. They may not choose to get this. Not all high school students get the college career ready diplomas. So that this may not be for everyone, but at least on a supported level, I think we should address it with most of our students. But in the past, it hasn't been.
That is my question. I have a couple of nonverbal students. I mean, with them, how can I make them, college career ready? How is that possible with the nonverbal kids? Will they be exempt from this?
Yeah, I have a similar question too. Most of my population is nonverbal with some severe behavior issues. So we've tried to bring them into programs that we've created within the school, working with the custodians or working in the lunchroom. Next year, of course, like Dr. Kayatin said, I'm transitioning to a different school, but they're starting what they're calling the Bobcat Bistro, which is going to be a student-run coffee shop in Lee County. My students that are readers, that are verbal, they can do the timesheets, they can, follow the directions, but my nonverbal students, it has been a struggle.
Well, I even have the parents of my two that are nonverbal. The parents, if we do a lot of activities or things with them in the classroom, she will not sign off for them to do a whole lot because she says it disrupts their routine and, gives them anxiety and all that. So she will not even sign off for them to do a lot. So my hands are really kind of tied there because they are, per the parent, are not allowed to participate in a lot of the activities.
Yeah. So this is Cheryl. Hello, everybody. How are you all doing?
Doing great.
Hey,
Good.
Cheryl.
I'm gonna leave my camera on. So it sounds like you're having some good conversation, and I don't know if Will realized I was listening. I just have logged in, but so he's texting me, but I'm listening, Will. So for those nonverbal kids, and I think I only probably got half of the information, but for the nonverbal kids, I think it's probably a twofold answer. So my first answer would be is, those nonverbal kids are getting ready to exit high school, and it's, going to be kind of sad for them not to have a communication system. And so that's a problem statewide, is that we're letting our kids leave high school without a communication system. So you might want to think about revisiting that with the ARC and think about how can we get this student hooked up with some communication, because think about how sad that would be to leave school at 18 or maybe 21 years old and not have that communication system. So, even socially, obviously they need that, but for emergency purposes, they're going to need that. And many times it may be that their parents are getting older and we don't really know where life's going to take these students. So I would definitely encourage you to search that out with the ARC and your folks, your speech people, and kind of see, okay, how can we get some sort of communication with the students, whether it's, a low-tech version, maybe like PEX, or just a regular board, or maybe even a core board setup. So that's the first thing I would do, and is think about that. But at the same time, we have to meet our students where they're at. So I'd heard Julia mention the Bobcat Bistro, and I only heard like a piece of that, I think. But so I would think about jobs within that Bobcat Bistro that maybe they don't have to have communication for initially. So there's a student that I know that had, and he was verbal, but this story still applies, I believe. And so he did dishwashing in a restaurant. So we need to think about, could the students really do a task without that verbal right out of the gate? So that would be my second part of that answer. But moreover, what basic vocabulary would they have to work at the Bobcat Bistro or somewhere like that? So for example, like I'm thinking of a Walmart greeter, and this is probably not a good example because many of you don't have a Walmart, or maybe some of you do. But so when I would go into Walmart, I would see sometimes a door greeter. And so could that nonverbal student, possibly stand there and greet people? So we know the standards start out in the classroom setting, so we practice there. So could that student practice with maybe a switch that said good morning when the students come in, and then take that out a step farther into the school, and maybe they could hit a button that said good morning everyone as the students were entering the school, and then move that out into the community where again they hit the switch. Maybe the people come into the library or something, they hit the switch that says hello, or some kind of greeting, and then on into their work site. And so sometimes we have to think about something called job carving. And so that's basically when there's not necessarily a job creating that task or performing that task or duty, but we think about ways that we could incorporate our student into that job and be successful. And so this is an example that at a training the other day I give that comes to my mind. So a lot of times our kids are 18 or 21, somewhere along in there when we leave, so I think we would agree they were adults. But sometimes we have programs like at the library. I think probably you all have a library, and sometimes those libraries will have things for younger kids. So they may have story time. Well, probably that's not going to be appropriate for a 21-year-old to go to story time and hear a story about Jack and the Beanstalk, but it might be appropriate for that 21-year-old student to be a helper for the librarian who's reading that story. So, maybe they could hit the switch and say, hello, how are you? Or some of you folks that probably did story-based lessons with that repeated storyline, maybe they could hit the switch and do the repeated storyline within that book. So basically you're carving them out a job with the skills that they have or skills that they can learn, but something that they can be successful with. And I'll tell y'all this, and I'm going to hush for a second, but so a couple years back, right before COVID happened, there was a speech therapist that came to me and she told me this story, and it's such a sad story, but it is so true. So this speech therapist had encountered a mother of a student who had recently graduated. So the speech therapist said, hey, how's little Johnny, or whatever the kid's name was, doing? So how's he doing? And so the mom said, well, he's at home with grandma and they're just waiting to die. And I thought, it was so sad. And so she went on to explain, the mother did, that the reason she was saying that is because the student had no social opportunities. He had no friends. He really didn't have a whole lot of skills, and he was nonverbal. So given all of those factors, he had really nothing to look forward to in life. And so, it's kind of sad. Then his parents worked outside the home all day. So, they were not a whole lot of help socially for him. But that's the stories that I think about. These kids, when they leave, well, what in the world are they going to do? And I know sometimes we have kids who have situations that, are beyond our control, but, there may be other kids that, we could provide some services for to get them to that point to where, they're not just at home in the state of boredom and seclusion. And, I think we can all probably speak to that seclusion a little more since COVID has come along. So just some things to think about, and maybe think out of the box and work with that ARC. Does that help any at all?
Yes, and I think that actually kind of piggybacks off of a conversation we had toward the beginning of the training. We've had some pushback as teachers and educators from families who don't understand, I guess, the economics of working as a person with disabilities. There's a big fear of losing medical cards and checks.
Yep.
I can think of two students I've had that have graduated just in the past few years, and it's kind of a similar situation, that they're just sitting at home doing nothing, especially with COVID, and their parents are worried to let them get employment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and and of course, obviously, and I know you did this, but I'll say it anyway, but so you obviously have explained the economics to them, and some parents, you're not gonna, it doesn't matter how many times you explain it, they're not gonna trust. And I can understand that from a parent perspective, because sometimes it's fear of the unknown. But one angle that you may want to think about going about is thinking about, is there volunteer positions that they could do, like at that local library, that doesn't include money? I mean, of course, competitive employment is always our goal, but at the same time, I personally feel like we have to be realistic. And if we know mama's never going to let, Johnny have, a paycheck, a job making a paycheck, then that's something that we need to think about. But I love the idea of still thinking about, well, we don't really know where Johnny's going to wind up in a couple of years, or, what his situation may bring. So I think we still have to think about what skills can we give Johnny, that way that if something unexpected happens and for whatever reason, maybe he has to get a position or has to get a job, that he could do that. But definitely always go to that volunteer angle if they just won't accept the competitive employment with a paycheck option.
Well, and the volunteer option sounds excellent, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because I really hadn't even considered that. I guess I've been so focused on the competitive employment, like you said, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I mean, we have to think individually, and of course, competitive employment is always our first option. But if we sit down and we see right out of the gate that competitive employment is not going to be an option because of some barriers that we can't remove. I mean, you can explain the financial piece to the parent and have Social Security come in and explain that, but still some parents are not going to go for that. So we still have to think about, okay, well, what's the next best step? What's the next least restrictive environment for the student. And it could be volunteer work. And, think about it in terms of employment. I mean, there's a difference in working 40 hours a week and volunteering a few hours a week. And, the student may really look forward to that volunteering, and that would be much better than the alternative, which is staying at home. And it's individualized always for our students. It's always individualized and in light of their current circumstances. So
Cheryl, Miss Napier from Floyd Central mentioned, and she was referencing 2 students that she currently has on her case. They're nonverbal. They're twins.
Yep.
Mistaken. Selena, is that correct?
Yes.
So as we've discussed the career work experience certification process and ESAR, the instrument to assess CWEC, is it going to be possible to get our nonverbal students career ready, if that's an option that's chosen as part of their alternative diploma? What advice would you give? And a lot of our low incidence teachers have nonverbal students, and they want to lead them along the pathway of becoming career ready through the CWEC process. What advice would you give Miss Napier and other teachers? Because this is all being recorded and we're going to share this.
Right. Well, the first thing I would do is have a discussion with the ARC, because, within that ARC process, we have to consider assistive technology. And so if we have nonverbal students.
They recently got screened by the speech pathologist, and they do have a Go Talk now.
Okay, good. So then I would definitely focus and just have a discussion with that ARC about, okay, how can we incorporate this Go Talk into getting career ready? And I would definitely focus heavily upon that, because, I feel like it's such an injustice to our students to let them go without some kind of communication system from our schools. I don't think you should stay in schools for 12 or 15 years and exit at age, 21 without a communication device or any mode of communication. It doesn't have to be a high-tech device, but, many years ago, there was a gentleman come down from New York, and, I hadn't been working real long, and he told the story about students having communication because we had some people in the audience kind of fussing, saying, well, I know what he wants because he'll get my hand and he'll take me there. And this gentleman, as I said, was from New York, so he was quite blunt. And so he said, ma'am, if you can't have your student go into McDonald's and order a hamburger with no pickles, then he cannot communicate, because you need to be able to do those life skills, such as order at a restaurant. And so I just think that's sad. Our kids stay so many years in schools and they leave with nothing to communicate with. Yeah, I just think that's a basic right in life, to be able to communicate.
Cheryl,
That's just my opinion.
I had a student who wouldn't initiate any conversation, but if you asked him a question, he would give you a 1-syllable reply.
Yep.
So when we approached the parents and we asked them to get him a job, of course, they were fearful of him doing a job. So I said, what if we just allow him to clear his own lunch table? Just his own lunch table. So he did just his own lunch table. And then he got up and started wiping other tables. But the problem we found was that he was haphazard. He was wasn't doing it in an efficient manner. So we went and got some red Solo cups. And we put on every table in the lunchroom. And as he wiped that table, he'd pick the cup up and take it to the next table, So we got to the point where the principal came out and was going on about how wonderful a job he was doing. Well, when the principal was out there, he pointed to some of the pictures on the wall of some academic awards that were on there. And he said, magic lamp, because he saw that little, looked like an Aladdin's little magic lamp on the academic awards. And from that, he began speaking. And at 16 years of age, he became verbal. And he talked to the janitors. And of course, we came up against the roadblock when he graduated last year. The parents still were hesitant to let him have a job, but we went ahead and set him up with Mountain Comprehensive Care for the supportive workshop. Got
Yep.
everything done, got all the paperwork, but the mother didn't show to give permission. But we know that even so, he is equipped to clean the table at his home.
Yep. Yep. Well, and I love that, because here's the thing: when those students are in our care, we have a responsibility, just like you did, to individualize that instruction and to focus on the individualized needs of that student. You did your job. You did what you needed to do and what you're supposed to do. It's, we beyond 21, we can't control that student's environment. And so I would just say good job, because, that parent may get to thinking in 6 months that, she may need to reinitiate that. But, we can't control what happens afterward, but we can give them the skills just like you did and equip them with those skills that's at least an option for him.
Cheryl,
good job to you.
Yes, that was a great story, Miss Bartley. Cheryl, can you talk a little bit about the accountability, obviously, that's connected to the CWEC process?
Yeah, well, so I guess Will showed you the graphic early on. So in order to be, let's start with career ready. In order to be career ready, you have to benchmark on the ESAR. So you can administer as a teacher that ESAR once the kid completes the first 2 courses and is enrolled in the 3rd. So that would be called early administration. Oftentimes that might be when the student's in 11th grade, but it depends on where you are in the course sequence. So you can give that to them early, and I would give you some advice. If I had a kid that I thought was going to benchmark, I would probably go ahead and give it to him at 3rd grade just to have a go at, or I'm sorry, not 3rd grade. Sorry, I'm distracted. When they were enrolled in that 3rd course, just to kind of see where they're at. Because, hey, we want our students to get credit where credit's due. Absolutely. And so this is going to go into accountability for the school. But not only that, but when we administer that ESAR and we find out where the gaps are, then we can use that as a type of formative assessment, because as teachers, we know that if there are gaps in this spot and that spot and this spot, we know that's where we can focus our instruction the following year. So you could definitely use it as a point of instruction for students, because we know the standards, right? We know exactly what standards they're going to be focused on for that assessment. So we can teach those standards like nobody's business. So that's one thing. So then they could take the ESAR again in 12th grade. And if they still don't benchmark, they can take that up to grade 14 until they are issued a graduation code. So Will and I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Some districts do graduation codes a little bit differently. So that's what you'll need to find out, is when Johnny is going to be issued that graduation code. Because once the graduation code is issued, then the Career of Technical Education will go and they'll pull the scores, and they'll go ahead and take the highest score, okay? But keep in mind the ESAR is separate, I guess, from individualized student needs. So even if the student is, say, as a senior or age 18, they're issued a graduation code, but yet they're going to come back for that grade 14, which who knows, could be 2 or 3 years depending on the kid's birthday. You can still continue with the coursework, and you can still continue with the work-based learning hours. So that's kind of a side note there. So in order to be transition ready, you'll have to benchmark on the ESAR, okay? Or not transition ready, I misspoke. In order to be career ready, you have to benchmark on the ESAR and complete those 4 courses, okay? And those 4 courses consist of that 40 hours per course of work-based learning. So if they did both of those things, they would be considered career ready. Now, in terms of career ready, if they, that'll be within the school's accountability system for them to be career ready. And then the academic ready is a whole nother animal, but that would help them be career ready.
And even though, because we talked a little bit about this, and even though it's optional to take a student along the career ready certification pathway as part of their alternative diploma, you had some interesting comments about that, because when we talk about accountability again, obviously schools would prefer that their students are career ready certified, for lack of a better term, because it impacts their accountability scores.
Yep. Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, before I forget, please give some advice before we wrap up here, because we're getting real close to 12. For those teachers out there that have not had a chance to start teaching the courses, and the first course is developing career options. So if you had an audience full of brand new teachers, and we're going to have those this year, I think in our staff meeting, it was mentioned that there are, and they're not necessarily all low incidence teachers, but there are 60 new teachers in our service region that are in the MAT program.
Yep.
So if I'm a teacher, whether I'm experienced or new, and I've not had a chance to take this dive and start teaching these courses and organizing these work-based learning experiences, what would you advise me to do? Where's my starting point?
Well, first thing you need to do is go to your guidance counselor, and you need to pull the students, probably pull their transcript, and also, of course, in the IEP, there's multi-year course of study. You need to see where the kids are. They may have already had one of the courses. You know, I don't know. There's no way to know that unless you go pull the transcript. Otherwise, you need to have that conversation with that guidance counselor to enroll those students in that first course. And so I guess, Will, you've provided some resources with the course codes. The guidance counselor will ask you for the course code for that, and there's 600 course codes. So that's the first thing you need to do. And then the second thing you need to do is really think about how you're going to teach those courses, and I can send you some information to get you started on that, and some unit plans and some instructional pieces, things like that. But that's the first thing you need to do is get that kid enrolled in that first course. Get going on your teaching. Now, probably, you know, as a new teacher, August, September, October, you may not have a lot of work-based learning activities going on, but get you that work-based learning manual out, open it up, and kind of see, you know, what resources you have already within your school that you can start getting the students some hours. So Julia had mentioned the Bobcat Grill, I think is what it was called, or something like that. So, you know, you may want to be wanting to think about, okay, how can I get Johnny some hours within this Bobcat Grill? Now, probably Johnny may not have enough skills to do that. I don't know. It would be individualized. But you could also, within the Bobcat Grill setting, do maybe some mentoring or some shadowing. So you go in, the student does, and watches another kid kind of do their job. So lots of different opportunities. I really encourage you not to get all of your work-based learning hours in the same setting or with the same type of work-based learning, but you know, you got to start somewhere, and the content will always be started out being taught and practiced in that classroom, and then from there it'll go out and be practiced in the school, and then the community, and then the workplace. So probably just go ahead, pull all of your resources, list all of your possible resources within that school, and do that. So also another thing I would recommend is thinking about that work-based learning in terms of complexity, I guess, for lack of a better word. So there's going to be a progression that you may start with for students, and you're probably not going to start, for example, with entrepreneurship. So that's basically where kids go out and start a business. So we know kids in the first class probably, okay, you notice I said probably, they're probably not going to start out with entrepreneurship because, you know, that's the higher level of skills and complexity required for that. So you may want to start with one of the ones that may not be as complex, like shadowing or mentoring. School-based enterprise, I mean, that could be one as well. And keep in mind, you're doing 20 hours a semester or 40 hours a year. And so the reason that's written like that is so that you understand that there's a lot of flexibility. So some schools started out and said, hey, we're going to do just classroom instruction that first semester, and then we're going to do some school-wide instruction with the standards. And then we're going to start in the spring with that 40 hours after kids have had some instruction. So you'll need to think about your individual kids that you have your individual situation within your school, and even consider what's going on in your community and workplace options as well. But also go back and think about the students' transition goals. Think about, the ILP and what they're interested in. So the other day, Will and I went to a classroom, and there was a student interested in gardening there. And I think her family had, made some things happen for her that she could do some gardening. So for that student, if I had her and she was in my first class and maybe she's a freshman, I may pull those things out even into my science coursework and say, well, we're going to plant, I'm not a garden person, so I'm probably a bad person to give you this example, but you may plant a sunflower or something like that, or have some kind of little greenhouse situation in your classroom. That way the students working on the science content, but they're also learning skills that focuses back on that IEP and that ILP, and you're kind of pulling that all together as a common thread. And that's another thing I would really encourage you to do as a new teacher. Sometimes I think we get overwhelmed with all these acronyms and paperwork and understanding how they all fit together. Use that IEP and use that ILP as a tool to help that student. So it really should guide you in terms of what's going to happen for that student for that school year.
That's great advice. And before we adjourn, Miss Bartley did ask a question, and I want to circle back around to it relative to creating work-based learning experiences out in the community. She ran into some challenges with her school and liability insurance. What kinds of conversations and feedback have you heard from teachers about placing students out in the community as it relates to liability insurance? Is that covered by the school?
Yeah.
Bartley, you can elaborate.
And that's a good question. And I want to give you the short of it. I would assume all schools have different types of insurance and, different types of thinking in terms of liability. One place that I would go to search out some of that and look for forms and release forms, things like that, is that Kentucky Work-Based Learning Manual. So I don't know if you've seen that. I'm sure Will shared it with you, but it's kind of got a washed out background, and it has the different types of work-based learning listed on the front. I would definitely take that to your principal or guidance counselor or DOS or whoever's kind of giving you this information, and share that with them, because that Kentucky Work-Based Learning Manual was developed by KDE through the career of technical education. So, it's not just something somebody dreamed up. I mean, that's a KDE document outlining for students to do this type of learning. Yep. So I would imagine there are multiple loopholes to get through that. And it may just be as simple as some releases, and there are some different types of forms within that manual within each of the different types of work-based learning that might help you out with that. But KDE, they built this 40 hours into that coursework. So KDE is well aware that students will be going out, and they encourage students to go out. And so even within the ESAR, and of course, this is highly secure testing data. We can't really be talking a lot of specifics about that ESAR, but within one of the manuals, I think it's the CWEC manual, it basically spells out that students cannot get full points on ESAR unless they are off of the school campus performing some of this work-based learning. So, given all of that evidence, I would think there's definitely ways around that liability part.
Of that 40 hours that you said we had to have for each course, does that full 40 hours have to be beyond the school?
Nope, it doesn't. That's an excellent question. No, and to be honest with you, if I were the queen and I was in a classroom and I had kids in that first course, I probably would not send my kids off of that campus that first year, unless it was very specific to that individual's needs. I would probably go ahead and do that class-based instruction. I would try to do some maybe mentorship. I would probably do some shadowing and some school-based enterprise that first year. And it might be that within my my courses, when I design my courses and all that kind of stuff, it might be that each year that's kind of the same essential setup that I do. And then later on, as the kids gain more skills and get more access to those standards, then I would, take them out into the community. So when you're completing that ESAR, you're going to get to use all of that. Now, there will be a catch because it needs to be current data. So, you can't really say, well, Johnny has this skill or that skill unless you've seen it, in the last year. So in that case, you would set up a simulation. So the answer is no, they don't have to go off campus every year. So I would probably reserve that for later on up in the coursework. But, it's dependent upon the kid. There's one kid that I know of that's going to a recycle plant. And, I think that he will get to do that for a couple of years of his high school career. So, but that was individualized for that student. He was ready, or other kids may not be ready. Plus, they may need more support.
Nope, it's good to see friendly collegial faces. Thank you so much. And if there's anything I can do to help you, you can count on me as we move forward. I would love to be involved in helping to brainstorm and teach and coach and do workshops, whatever I can do to help you all, you can count on me. Okay.